Hello, welcome to Myofascial Release and Restore. My name is Kim. I'm second one of these and excited to get it underway. The props I've got with me today are, of course, her trusty tennis ball. Any kind of like rubber ball or similar object will be perfect. I've also got a block. This will be helpful, not totally necessary, but if you have something like a book or a small box, that might also be really useful just to have to elevate the ground for one of our movements tonight. And then of course I've got my blanket and my bolster. Either one of these will do. More props the better, but certainly whatever you have will be just fine. So go ahead and grab anything you need. Again, I've got blanket, bolster, tennis ball, and block. The only thing you absolutely need is a tennis ball and then some kind of blanket or pillow just to make the restorative poses a little bit more useful and feel a little bit better. So gather those things, get your water. I'm just gonna sit here for a few more moments before we get started. All right, once you're feeling settled, we're gonna start with just a little bit of movement to get grounded, to come into this space, a little bit of movement with a little bit of breath work. So start in a comfortable seat. Seated is awesome. Sitting like cross-legged. You could also kneel. You could sit on your blanket. That's my personal favorite. So feel it out, see what you wanna do. And we're just gonna take a few gentle movements. Let's start by rolling the shoulders up by the ears. And back, around, and down. Inhale, forward and up. Exhale, back, around, and down. One more like that. And then inhale, hands reach up. Exhale, up and over to the right. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, up and over to the left. Inhale, center. Exhale, cactus your arms, lift the heart, gaze gently up. Inhale, center. And exhale, reach it out in front of you. This can be a big reach, or maybe you just tap your hands to the ground. Inhale up. Exhale to the right. Center with the inhale. Left with the exhale. Center with the inhale. Cactus with the exhale, heart lifts. Center. And round it forward. We're going to do that one more time. Alternatively, you could just rest your hands on your thighs and start to make some circular movement. So if this would feel better, go for it. Otherwise, hands up. And over to the right. Up. And over to the left. Up to center. Little back bend here just to open the heart, roll the shoulders back, reach up, and round it forward. And coming back to center, you can stay seated as you are, or you might want to readjust here. We're going to be here for a little bit longer. Hands interlaced behind the back. Inhale, shoulders roll back, heart lifts. And then taking your hands to the right side of your body. So behind my back, this looks like this. And if that doesn't feel good, you can just uninterlace your hands and let one hand kind of hover back here, or even hands just by the sides. Inhale, grow the spine tall. And exhale, right ear to right shoulder. So you're not hiking that shoulder up, roll it down. And then let your left shoulder really relax away from left ear. We're going to hold for a couple breaths here. It might feel nice to tip your chin up a little bit. Might feel nice to tip the chin slightly down. You can feel that out and pause where it feels appropriate. And then over the course of the next like 30 seconds or more, you're just going to slowly roll your chin to your chest. So really, really slow. Pause and take a couple of breaths anywhere that you need to. And when you're done with that, lift your head back up to center. No rush if you're not there yet. Inhale, hands behind you, lift the heart. And then interlace your hands the opposite way and over to your left side, left ear to left shoulder. And you can play with how this feels in your body. So maybe letting the elbow come out, maybe holding it in. And again, option to tip the chin a little up, a little down. And then slowly roll your chin to your chest for the next, like, quite a few breaths. And when you're done, chin comes back to neutral, hands behind the back, inhale. And exhale, release your arms. So you're going to be working a little bit into the upper body tonight, but let's start with lower body, hip flexors. For this movement, you're going to be lying on your belly and working your tennis ball into an area about the size of your handprint in the front of each hip. I really like to use a folded blanket at the back of my mat anytime I lay down on my belly. You can always put it there and then just kick it out of the way if you decide it's not meant to be. It doesn't feel good there. So lying down on your belly, you may like to have other props up here just in case you want to rest your head. And then slide that tennis ball just underneath the crease of the hip. We're going to take a few minutes to feel this out. And then we'll have 3 different opportunities to pause and just take a few breaths in this side. As you're feeling it out, one thing that I want you to notice is really the orientation of your hip joint and your low back. So what I mean by that is if you have really tight hip flexors, sometimes that presents in this way like I'm doing now, where my back is compressed and my hip flexors aren't actually even lengthening here on the mat. If you're not feeling much of this, or if you're feeling like there's a lot of lift, a lot of space between the front of the hip and the mat, then this little tip is for you. I want you to tilt your tailbone down. So you might even engage the glutes a little bit, pressing that hip flexor into the round. You might also bend your knee, and you might even lift that leg off the ground for a moment just to feel the front of the hip flexor melt into the tennis ball. So feeling it out here, again, we're kind of working into that whole handprint size area in the front of the hip. So you might move a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit in, a little bit out. In these first moments, just noticing where you feel like little twinges, little surprises, or maybe it's expected. I have really tight hip flexors, so pretty much anything in here is like, yep, that tracks. And then once you've felt out enough, go ahead and pause where you are. Now I'm holding myself up here so that I can see that the camera's still working. You can just like let yourself relax as much as possible. And I say as much as possible because for me, this is not necessarily a super relaxing place to hang. So if you can relax areas that aren't feeling that intensity, maybe you can start to soften into the areas that are directly impacted here. On your next breath, go ahead and find a second spot here just to pin and hold. You might have to feel it out a little bit more. Maybe you just think like, I'm not really done with the first spot, I'm going to stay. That's also great. Again, feel free to adjust, maybe lifting the knee either with bent leg or leg long. Maybe that's only for like a momentary thing, or maybe it stays up. Last breath here. And we're going to find that third spot. So maybe for me, I'm getting a little bit down closer to the tops of the quads. Maybe you're moving more in towards the pelvis, more out towards the outer hip, higher towards psoas. As you breathe, you can imagine hip flexors melting around that tennis ball. One more moment here. And then rolling off that side, remove the tennis ball and just come to a neutral position here. Legs lengthened behind you. I like to relax my head down. And during this time in between sides, just take a few breaths. Notice any change that's happened, any work that you just did, any space you created. And then let's move to the other side. So rolling off of the other side, placing that tennis ball under the hip flexors, and take a few moments to feel it out. Remember some options here as you're feeling it out, especially if your bum's just kind of sticking up, compressing into the low back, would be tuck the tailbone, lift the rib cage, and then maybe even lift that leg. For me, that's always a temporary check-in. Like, okay, am I feeling this? How does it feel when I'm putting that pressure on? And then adjusting to the amount of pressure I want, depending on the space that pressure is being applied to. So rolling in and out, exploring that whole front side of whichever hip you're rolling into. Maybe you're surprised by what's happening in there. Maybe it's just what you expected. And that surprise can go both ways. Sometimes I expect the spot to be really sensitive or feel really intense, and it doesn't. Once you've found a spot that just needs a little extra love, go ahead and pause there. You can relax the upper body, maybe resting forehead on your mat. And as you feel ready, switch to that second spot. We're just going to pin and hold. Notice what comes up when you're here. If that intensity that you feel, how does that manifest? Is that a motivator? Like, oh yes, so intense, so good. Like, I need to do this more, more intense, more difficult, more challenge? Or does that manifest with wanting to avoid it? Like, ugh, this does not feel comfortable. Not for me. maybe somewhere in between. This is not a space for judgment. You don't have to do anything about it, just a space to notice those patterns. We're noticing physical patterns we hold and also those thought patterns. When you feel ready, find that last space on this side. And as you feel ready, roll off that side, remove the tennis ball, and just lie down for a couple breaths. Check in. Our first restorative posture is going to be a restorative child's pose, so you can slowly, gently make your way up. And then this is where these props come in really handy. So if you've done any yoga at all, you're probably familiar with child's pose. Restorative child's pose, we just want to set this up so that it's comfortable, so that you can relax into it and let the props hold you up for the next few minutes. Some ways to do that. I'm going to show you with all the things, and then you can pick and choose what you like. So a couple things that are really factors here. Knees is a huge one. Maybe your knees don't love this much bend. You can just sneak that blanket in and fold it as much as you want. You can prop yourself up with something even a little more bulky. Maybe a little less bulky, like I'm doing right now, just sliding that back. So now it's under my heels. The second thing here is bolster. So I've got my bolster. I'm really lucky because I have this huge one that has multiple sides. It's really sturdy and stable, but a pillow will work here just fine. For this, I like to drag mine in nice and close and then just lie down on top of it, gazing in either direction. If hip flexors are really a limiting factor for you, or backs of the hips, but either way, this movement maybe doesn't feel so great, you could even take a pillow and slide it into the hip flexors and just come forward and rest, maybe resting your forearms on something like my block, which is just out of reach, or even just staying upright like this. So we're going to be here for about 5 minutes. Just a reminder that 5 minutes is not like a magic number. So there's a reason we hold poses for so long in restorative yoga, but especially if you're doing a pose that's a little bit higher maintenance or a little bit higher effort like this, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes is more appropriate. Get yourself set up, relax into it. If you're doing this variation where you lie down on the pillow, make sure your arms aren't holding you up. Let them go wide, let them relax. If you're feeling like I'm right now, pressure in the fronts of the ankles, that could be another great place for your blanket. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my blanket like this. I'm going to fold a little soft area on one side and then put my ankles right there. So I'm adding a little bend to the ankle. And that feels a bit better for me. Lots of options with the props to make this work for you. Notice your experience here. And really be like honest about that. It's okay if you get in here and you're like, you know what, actually, like I'm not super comfortable. I need to adjust something. It's okay if you get here and you're like, I'm not super comfortable, but there's nothing that can be adjusted. A lot of times in restorative yoga, discomfort comes from the mind. We feel a psychological discomfort holding a pose for a long period of time, sitting in relative silence for a long period of time, especially when we're used to moving from one thing to the next, from one project, from one email to the next, one place to the next. There's a lot of physiological benefit in doing these postures, but for me, the greatest benefit that I've experienced from doing restorative yoga is that psychological benefit of practicing discomfort, practicing slowing down, practicing stillness, and finding contentment in those unusual spaces. If it feels good here, you can close your eyes. And if you've taken this variation where you're lying across the bolster and looking to one side or across the pillow, you might just want to switch sides. And remember, that's a might. You don't have to if you're really comfy where you are, if there's a reason that it doesn't work for you to look in the other direction. You can stay right where you are. We've got about 1 more minute here, so check in, notice if this posture, if this variation is still serving you, if there's something that you need to switch up for the last minute. As you feel ready, take a couple more breaths here, then slowly you can start to push up. And we've got some time for you to come out of this. So that's time for you to lie down, time for you to take a little bit of a twist or maybe a cat-cow, time to pop up into a quick down dog. Just time to take a few check-in movements. One thing that I've been finding in this, like working from home and doing everything from home, is that my movement patterns have changed a lot. I'm doing different kinds of exercise. I'm sitting probably more than I would in my office. So what my body needs has changed a little bit. That makes those exploratory moments or opportunities for exploration even more valuable. You know, popping into down dog and thinking like, whoa, my calves. Great things to notice. Our next myofascial release movement, we're going to come back to the belly. So with myofascial release, we're typically using body weight to determine pressure. So you're using the weight of your own body to like press down onto an area. And this next area is going to be the front of the shoulder and chest. So again, about a handprint area. And I say that roughly, you know, if you're rolling around here and you're like, ah, man, actually down my arm is really more what I need right now, or a little bit closer in or a little bit more in the chest, that's awesome. So lying down on your belly, you can do this without a block. It might require a little bit of creative maneuvering, but not terrible, not crazy. So if you don't have a block or a book, don't panic. If you do have a block, like this one, you might even find that this is too big and you might prefer to do it without the block. So you can test and see. You're going to take your tennis ball, put it on the block or the ground. And I've got my block at kind of a weird angle here. You can feel that out for yourself, just so that it's lifting the tennis ball up, but not in your way. Then I'm just going to put my shoulder just right down on that tennis ball. So I like to have my arm a little bit out for this, which is conveniently like right in the line of the camera, but you know it's under here. Not a magic trick, it's not going to disappear. So here, I'm just going to roll around in that space, front of the shoulder, maybe even into armpit a little bit. Oof, definitely something going on there. Maybe into the front of the chest. And also depending on where you're feeling this, you may choose to remove the block. So if you're feeling this just in a space that's hard to work into with that block, just take it out of the way. Using the floor is just fine. Because we're working near a joint, how that joint moves is going to affect this. So obviously, shoulder joint is the joint we're working. Arm up, sideways, or down, or anywhere in between is going to change how this feels. So don't hesitate to play with that. Just like we did with the hip, we're going to find 3 opportunities to pin and hold here. That's what that technique is called when we just hold and apply pressure. That's pinning. And once you find that first spot, you can go ahead and pause. Again, you can hold your head up here because this is a kind of restorative combo class. I hate holding my head up in anything with the word restore in it. So I might just rest my head on the ground or even my pillow. Just got that round, that tennis ball sandwiched between my shoulder and the block. And when you're ready, find that next spot. So maybe nearby, maybe far away. So one of the things I love about this practice is a spot in my body that I normally like group together or even group as like another part of my body, like my arm. All of a sudden now, the front of my shoulder seems like miles away from like closer to the collarbone. Really expands awareness when we work inwards, like physiologically working into the body. And then you can go ahead and find that last spot. And maybe that's a shift you make with your body, or maybe that's a shift you make with your arm. And again, for me, this spot feels miles away from the first one, even though it's only about an inch. Last moment. And then when you're ready, you can just move the round and the block out of the way. Take a moment. You can either bring your hands up high like you did before, or rest them by your side, head down. And you can move your pillow out of the way, unlike what I did and just like awkwardly cranked my neck. Don't do that. Take a couple of breaths. Feel into any shift that has occurred in that shoulder. And you might feel a little bit of a tingling, a little feeling of cool or warmth. That sensation might be really just located in the spot that touched the tennis ball, or it might spread out a little further into the arm, into the chest, into the side body. And then we'll move into the other side. So you can position your block. Remember, these first few moments are really just a chance to feel this out. Sometimes that can seem like a waste of time when you're doing something on the second side. It's easy to think like, oh yeah, I got this. I know how I want the block. I know how I want my arm. I know what area is going to feel most tense. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's really a surprise. Like, wow, my right side has this weird tenseness in my chest, while my left side is more on the front of my shoulder. So feel this out. This is a new side. This is a new thing. Give it that respect, that time. Approaching this with a beginner's mind. A little bit of awkward rolling on this block and tennis ball, or not. If you're choosing to just do this straight on the ground, that is fine as well. Some maneuvering is great. Oh yeah, and like perfect example, this side is really different than the other side. So I'm gonna have my arm a lot lower on this side, I can already tell. And I'm gonna be focusing probably a little bit closer to the midline. When you find that spot, go ahead and pause, take a few breaths, get yourself comfortable in any other way that you possibly can. And then go ahead and find that second spot. We're just gonna pause and hold for a few breaths. And as you're ready, find that last spot, pin and hold. And then as you feel ready to let this go, move your props out of the way, lie down for a few breaths. And then slowly, gently make your way up to a comfortable seat. Our next restorative posture is going to be a supported fish pose. So you really only need either a blanket or a bolster or a pillow to do this one. Legs, doing just whatever's comfortable. Knees bent, knees out wide, legs long are all perfect. You're going to take your prop, put it in close so your glutes are still on the ground, but your low back is supported. And then lay all the way down. Head rests on the top edge. So I'm on my blanket right now. You can see I've just got a little bit of an arch through thoracic spine. You can make this a little bit more by using something a touch bigger. Just a reminder, back bends are energizing. So if it's a little bit later at night, you might want to keep this small. This feels pretty good for me today. If you wanted to make this even a little bit smaller, a great way to do this is to find a way to make this an incline. So you can either just take something simple like your folded blanket, prop it under there, and now my head's a little bit higher. You could also do the same with your block, just putting it on any of its three sides under the top of the bolster. So whatever you do, feel it out, lie down, palms up is really what I recommend, because we just opened up the space, right? So we want to enjoy it a little bit and continue to find a sense of spaciousness in the chest and shoulders. And we'll be here again for about 5 minutes. So these held postures can be a great time to, again, notice those thought patterns and movement patterns that kind of just stick with you unintentionally, that you don't really think about, that just happen. So for me, that's like sometimes things like fidgeting, right? Like moving fingertips and toes. Notice those fidgets or that desire to move. Take a deep breath. Just let your body be still. Now, of course, just because your body is not making any discernible movements doesn't mean it's totally still. You might be making micro movements. You might be holding tightness or holding tension, like clenching your fists, or mine is always like clenching the jaw. Maybe you clench the hips. Do a scan through your body from head to toe. Notice anywhere you're holding on. If you can, use a few deep, full exhales to let that go. And just like everything else, that stillness is something to be practiced. Not something necessarily even too idealized, just something to notice when you have the urge to not be in stillness. Sometimes you can respect that. Sometimes you can say like, oh man, I really want to fidget, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to take a deep breath and relax. Sometimes it's, I really want to fidget. I really want to itch my nose and I can't not. So I'm just going to do it. That's also okay. This is a practice, not a performance. A place to notice, not to judge. And sometimes that means noticing like, oh, whoops, I already did that without even thinking. Or like, whoops, I've been fidgeting this whole time. Or I've been clenching my jaw for like a few minutes now. That's all part of the work. Got a couple more minutes here. Even though I just spent like the last few minutes talking about how awesome stillness is and how you should totally do it. The more important thing is your intention. So if you're fidgeting, if you're moving because you're used to that, because you need that energy, that's a great time to practice stillness. If you realize that something's not feeling comfortable in your body, that's a great time to adjust. So this might be a nice time to adjust. You might also notice that movement is just what your body is craving. Something like slow, gentle rolling the head side to side. Or even a little bit of movement in the knees and hips. Notice why your body is craving that. Is it habitual? Is it because stillness is uncomfortable psychologically? Or is it because that's actually what your body wants? And sometimes it's really hard to tell. Sometimes it's so hard to know why you want to do what you want to do, or why your mind is asking for something, or if your body's actually asking for that thing. So take a few breaths, feel it out, try your best. But ultimately, let this be just a moment for you. A moment for you to do this as you see fit. When you do feel ready to come out, there's no rush. I love this pose. This is one of those that I could stay in all day. But when you do feel ready to come out, rather than just like sitting back up, we could just roll to the side, maybe rolling off your props. You might stay here for a moment. You might stay here, move your pillow, your blanket out of the way, and lie down on your back. You might roll to the side and then press up. Might feel good to fold forward or hug the knees in after that long, gentle back bend. For our next myofascial release movement, we're going to be working through the back of the neck. I'm going to just kind of turn around and show you what that's going to look like. I'll try to speak up a little bit so you can still hear me. So you're going to be using the tennis ball to roll just these muscles along the side of the neck, starting up really high and just working a little bit lower, depending on what feels good in your body. So we're going to do one side and then the other. And this is a little bit looser form. I like to move fairly continuously, maybe pausing for a couple of breaths here and there. But we're not going to take any like, okay, now hold it, kind of more formal, things like that. So let's start with one side. You're just going to put that tennis ball at the base of the skull on one side of the spine. And I like to keep my hand here just to make sure that that ball doesn't slip out of the way. You might not need to, depending on your carpet, the grippiness of your mat. So once it's on that one side, you might sway your head side to side a little bit. And then maybe you let that round travel down a little bit lower. Remember, staying on one side of the spine, especially if you're going lower than on the bottom of the skull. Really be gentle not to roll directly on the spine. And here, I like to keep my head tilted in that direction, so I'm not going to roll back and forth as much. And you're going to feel that in your own body. So if it feels like it's putting a lot of pressure on the spine, you'll know, just like back off there a little bit. You could come even a little bit lower. And maybe back up. So my favorite is just to stay up nice and high. And I know it's so hard to see right now, but I've just got this tennis ball under the back of my head, like so. And for me, that's just on my right side, kind of working up and down those muscles right along the spine. I like to keep that tennis ball really high and just kind of look side to side. Maybe I pause for a moment when I find a spot that like makes me make that weird face. And then gently lifting the head when you're ready, move the tennis ball out of the way, close your eyes, take a breath. And then we'll move to the other side. So you can stay right where you're at. I'm just gonna roll in case you might see this tennis ball under my neck. So I'm gonna do the other side, moving hair out of the way. And just placing, no, that's all right. Placing that tennis ball. This time for me, it's on my left side. For you, it might be different. I'm starting at the very top of the neck, back of the head. And just taking a few gentle movements side to side. And then maybe working down along the side of the neck. Side of the back of the neck, I should say. Maybe back up. So this is your time. Use it as you see fit. It's really common for your neck to hold a lot of tension. If you, like me, are also maybe sitting a little bit more, this is a space that can hold a lot of tension from slouching. When we slouch, the shoulders go forward, chin juts out, back of the neck shortens. For me, sometimes that can lead to headaches. This is my go-to movement for if my shoulders are tight, if my neck's feeling sore, if I'm starting to get a tension headache. Just a few more breaths here. And when you're done, move that off to the side, lie down, and just take a moment here. So if that didn't feel great, or if maybe you have a rubber ball, not a tennis ball, that can catch those little baby hairs and make this really uncomfortable, there are actually a couple different ways you can do that movement. And I find it so valuable. So just briefly, you can use a block. I really like the cork block for this, but a foam block also works. You'll notice I have it on its middle setting, so it's a little bit too high to be a comfortable pillow. And placing the very, like just under the skull, right at that corner. And it's going to roll side to side. That's also something you can do if you have a water bottle. You can just place it right at the top of the neck and roll side to side. Now, if you're using a water bottle especially, you don't want it to be under the back of the neck, because all that's going to happen is you're going to put your water bottle under there and your head just going to like collapse over it, and that's not doing any good. It doesn't feel nice and doesn't get rid of that tension in the top of the neck. So now that we've done that one, again, one of my favorites, go ahead and just come back up to a comfortable seat. We worked into the upper body quite a bit today, so we're going to add just a couple more movements before Shavasana. Let's start with the fingers. So just bending, you can rest your hands on your legs if you want, just bending, fingers out and in. And some people like to make these movements kind of fast. I really like to do it nice and slow. You can curl one at a time. Do 2 more, all the way in, all the way out. And then come to the wrists. It's going to make some wrist movements here. You can have hands open or fists. And this little exercise, you can do anytime. I love to do this if I'm feeling a bit stuck. Let's turn the wrist in the other direction. So we're just going to work up the arms, moving each joint. So next, elbows, out and in, out and in. Extending fully and bending fully. And shoulders, we can take a few shrugs, moving scapular joints. And then maybe a few circles. You can do one side or both sides at the same time. I like to do one side at a time so I can really reach all the way back and down both sides, like they're gonna get stuck on the ground. But that still felt really nice. So either way, totally fine. Once your sides are even, do a couple more shrugs. Let's find some movement in the neck. So right ear, right shoulder, we're gonna slowly circle down and around. And then as you circle up, just be really gentle, chin up. And we'll do one more circle in that direction. So this range of motion where you look up is important to remember, especially if you are like sitting a lot now. Let's go the other way. But just remember to not like dump into the back of the neck. That's not what we're looking for. It's a length. Lengthening the front of the neck, not shortening the back of the neck. One more circle this direction. And then opening arms, closing, opening, closing. And hands rest on your thighs, close your eyes or soften your gaze. And notice any energy flowing through the arms, hands, shoulders, neck or back of the head, upper back or chest. Our next posture is Shavasana. So that's where you just get to lie down. Any props are awesome to use here. You've got your pillow and your blanket, so feel free to use them. If you don't have any props or you don't like any, you can just lie down like so. Take up as much space as you like. This is where you will end class, or this is your last posture in class. So make it comfortable. We've got lots of time. Don't feel rushed. I will let you know when to come out. Before you move, just notice everything about your current experience. How does your body feel? Notice your breath. If what you're noticing is a sense that you just want to stay, please do. If you would like to, if you're ready to reawaken the body, you can start with some gentle movements. Maybe rocking head side to side, wiggling fingertips or toes. These movements might grow. Taking a big stretch is an option, especially if it's still a little bit early in the day. At night, I always like to just stay kind of nice and cozy. Eventually roll to either side into a fetal position. And then gently press up to seated. Any comfortable seat, your eyes can stay closed or gaze soft, hands to heart space, or wherever resonates with you. We'll end here with a full breath, taking that exhale out, empty the lungs all the way, keep exhaling. Then full inhale. And exhale. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste. My name is Kim. This is Release and Restore. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll try to do a good job at keeping an eye on those and checking them. Thanks, guys.